My name is Dr. Sarah Lirley, and my topic of study is 19th century U.S. history, the history of women and gender, and the history of death, dying, and death investigations. So the inquest into the death of Katerina Lirley, it's a really fascinating case because it's a case that's what I call a qualified verdict. So the coroner gave an explanation for why. He didn't just say she died by suicide. He said, this is why she died by suicide. She was an immigrant woman, a mother, and she was evidently somebody who endured domestic violence. One night she died by suicide she threw herself into a well. She was desperate because she was incredibly poor. Her husband beat her when he drank, which was quite a bit. She tucked her son in, kissed him goodnight, and waited till he was asleep. And she pulled loose some boards from the well. She threw herself into the well and she died by suicide. And her neighbor found her the next day when the sun woke up. And then the coroner came and decided that she died by suicide, but that maltreatment by her husband was the reason she died by suicide. In some cases, if someone had been drinking before they took their own life, it might be mentioned, or the verdict might just say suicide. But instead, the coroner blames her husband. And so she gets this verdict blaming her husband for her death. The office of the coroner in St. Louis operated in a similar way to coroner's offices in other cities, in the sense that the coroner was called when there was a sudden death, an unexpected death, a suspicious death, perhaps a death without medical attendance, so you weren't in a hospital or there was no physician. That was very common throughout cities across the country. That was the duty of the coroner, or in some cities they had a medical examiner, was to investigate these sudden or suspicious deaths, and then to make a determination as to how that person came to their death and to render a verdict. And so to do so, they may work with the police. If there was somebody who is suspected of committing a homicide, that person would be arrested and may go to trial if the coroner determined that, yes, they did commit this homicide. Or they may go to someone's home and, for instance, let's say it's a death by suspected suicide. The coroner may go to someone's home and talk with several people. The social location of witnesses differed quite a bit from the investigating coroners. Investigating coroners in the time period that my project covers, which is 1875 to 1885 in St. Louis, they were white. They were trained in medicine, so they had a great deal of formal education. They were middle to upper class. And the people that they interviewed while conducting the inquest that they relied on to help determine their verdicts, some of them were educated, white, middle class, but a lot of them were poor, working class, immigrant, women, all sorts of different occupations. There's even still more to be done with those coroners' inquests. There's so many of them, and they are just such a rich source.